January 19th, 2010, Dubai. Room 230, Al-Bustan Rotana Hotel. Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was dead. 26 Mossad operatives scattered across 3 continents. The operation was complete. Textbook execution, precision timing, 0 casualties among the operatives. Target eliminated, success. That's how the story is usually told. That's where most narratives end. Operation complete, mission accomplished, next target. But that was 10 years ago. Today is January 19th, 2020. A decade has passed. Enough time to see the ripples, enough time to measure the impact, enough time to ask the question nobody asks. What actually changed? This is not the story of how Mossad killed Mahmoud al-Mabhouh. Everyone knows that story. This is the story of what happened after. The consequences, the unintended effects, the second-order impacts that take years to reveal themselves. This is the story of whether the perfect operation was actually perfect at all. Because perfection in tactics doesn't always mean success in strategy. And success in the short term doesn't always mean victory in the long term. 10 years is enough time to know. So let's look. Let's examine what really changed in the decade after Dubai. Not what was supposed to change. Not what the planners hoped would change. But what actually changed. The answer might surprise you, or maybe it won't. Maybe the pattern is so familiar by now that we should have seen it coming all along. The first 48 hours after the assassination were chaos. Dubai police discovered the body on January 20th around 1 p.m. A hotel security check after al-Mabhouh failed to check out. The door to room 230 was locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry, no obvious trauma. Initial assessment, natural causes, heart attack probably. The man was 61, overweight, high stress. It happens. But something didn't sit right with the chief investigator. Small details, inconsistencies. The room was too clean. The body position was too composed. The timeline didn't quite make sense. They ran a full autopsy, toxicology, forensics. And that's when it became clear. This wasn't natural causes. This was murder. Sophisticated murder. Professional murder. The kind of murder that takes resources, planning, a team, the kind of murder that intelligence agencies do. Dubai police reviewed the hotel's security footage, all of it, hundreds of hours. And slowly, frame by frame, they assembled the picture. 26 people entering Dubai on January 19th. All on European passports, British, Irish, French, German, Australian, all staying in different hotels, all converging on the al-Bustan Rotana, all departing Dubai within hours of al-Mabhouh's death. Surveillance team, technical team, assassination team, support personnel, a full-scale operation. And on January 24th, 2010, Dubai police went public. The press conference was explosive. The police chief stood before a wall of screens showing photographs of the suspects. European-looking men and women. Professional. Unremarkable. These individuals, the police chief said, are believed to be Mossad operatives. This was a state-sponsored assassination on UAE soil. The photographs went viral. BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, every news outlet in the world. The faces of the team that had tried to be invisible were now the most visible people on the planet. Israel, of course, didn't comment. They never do. But Israeli media was jubilant. They celebrated al-Mabhouh's death, called it justice for the 1989 soldiers, praised Mossad's competence. Arab media was outraged, called it murder, violation of sovereignty, state terrorism. Western media was complicated. Some outlets focused on the audacity of the operation, the technical brilliance, the precision. Others questioned the legality, the ethics, the precedent. Everyone had an opinion. But here's what actually happened in those first few weeks. Diplomatic fallout. Britain, Ireland, France, Germany, and Australia all summoned Israeli ambassadors. Demanded explanations for the fake passports bearing their countries' identities. Israel didn't provide explanations. Mossad exposure. For the first time in decades, Mossad operatives' faces were public. Careers were over. Some went into deep cover, some retired. The team that had executed the perfect operation paid a price. Hamas reaction, immediate. Within 48 hours, Hamas leaders went into deeper hiding. Travel patterns changed, security protocols tightened. Trust in anyone decreased dramatically. Public relations. Here's where it gets interesting. In Gaza, in the West Bank, in parts of the Arab world, al-Mabhouh became a martyr. His funeral, held in Damascus, drew thousands. His face appeared on posters. His children gave interviews about their murdered father. The man Mossad eliminated became larger in death than he'd been in life. That's the first unintended consequence, martyrdom. Mossad killed a logistics coordinator, a weapons smuggler, a commander, yes, but not the most important one. Mid-level, in the grand scheme. But in death, he became a symbol, a rallying point, a reminder that Israel would hunt you anywhere, even in neutral territory, even in luxury hotels, even when you felt safe. The fear was useful for Israel. The martyrdom was useful for Hamas. Both sides got something. Neither got what they actually wanted. That should have been a warning sign. Here's the fundamental question that operations like Dubai never seem to address. What happens after you eliminate the target? Does the organization collapse? Does the operation stop? Does the threat disappear? Or does someone new step up? Someone younger, angrier, more motivated? In Mahmoud al-Mabhouh's case, the answer came quickly. Within 2 months, Hamas had restructured their weapons smuggling operation. New leadership, new protocols, new routes. The man who took over al-Mabhouh's role was named Ahmed al-Ja'abari. Younger, more aggressive, more innovative. Where al-Mabhouh had been methodical and cautious, al-Ja'abari was bold and creative. He expanded the smuggling networks, diversified the supply chains, built relationships with new Iranian contacts. By 2011, just 1 year after the Dubai operation, Hamas was receiving more weapons than they had under al-Mabhouh. Not fewer, more. This is the paradox of targeted killings. You remove one person, the organization adapts. Sometimes it gets weaker, sometimes it gets stronger, often it just gets different. In this case, different meant more effective. Al-Ja'abari didn't just replace al-Mabhouh, he improved the system al-Mabhouh had built. He learned from al-Mabhouh's mistakes, including the mistake of traveling to Dubai for meetings. New protocols, no more face-to-face meetings in neutral countries, everything through encrypted communications, everything through cutouts and intermediaries. The lesson of Dubai was clear. Nowhere is safe. So Hamas went deeper underground. More paranoid, harder to track, harder to target. Mossad eliminated one coordinator. Hamas created a system that didn't depend on any one coordinator. That's unintended consequence number 2. Organizational evolution. By trying to decapitate Hamas, Mossad forced them to build a more resilient structure, one that couldn't be decapitated. Now, to be fair, Mossad knew this might happen. They're not naive. They know organizations adapt. But here's what the planners probably underestimated: the speed of adaptation. Al-Ja'abari didn't just maintain al-Mabhouh's networks, he expanded them. Within 18 months, Hamas had more rockets in Gaza than at any previous point in their history. More rockets, better rockets, longer range, more accurate. The man eliminated in January 2010 was supposed to disrupt the weapons supply. By 2012, the supply had never been stronger. You could argue this would have happened anyway, that Hamas was going to expand regardless, that al-Mabhouh's death was incidental. Maybe. We'll never know the counterfactual. But we do know this: the operation that was supposed to weaken Hamas's military capability did not weaken Hamas's military capability. That's measurable, that's documentable, that's fact. Let's talk about the price Israel paid for the Dubai operation. not the tactical price. That was minimal. The operation succeeded. The target died. The team escaped. But the strategic price, the diplomatic price, that was substantial. First, the passport crisis. When Dubai released those photographs, 26 operatives with fake British, Irish, French, German, and Australian passports, it created a diplomatic nightmare. These weren't just fake documents. These were real passports, issued by real governments, but with photographs of Mossad operatives instead of the actual passport holders, which meant Mossad had either hacked into allied government databases or convinced someone inside those governments to issue the documents. Either option was bad. Either option violated trust. Britain's response was swift. The Foreign Office summoned the Israeli ambassador, expelled a Mossad station chief operating under diplomatic cover, changed their passport security protocols. Ireland did the same. So did France. So did Germany. So did Australia. These are Israel's allies, their closest partners. And for months, relationships were strained. Now, did this fundamentally change anything? No. Nations don't let one operation destroy long-term alliances. By 2011, relationships had normalized, but the cost was real. Trust was damaged. Protocols were changed. Cooperation was reviewed. For what? For killing one Hamas logistics coordinator? The cost-benefit analysis is worth considering. Second, the surveillance implications. By exposing the operation so publicly, Dubai essentially forced Mossad to burn an entire methodology. The use of fake European passports for operations in Arab countries? Much harder now. Border security increased. Biometric checks became standard. The playbook that had worked for decades needed rewriting. This wasn't catastrophic. Mossad adapted. Intelligence agencies always adapt. But it forced adaptation that wouldn't have been necessary if the operation had remained covert. And here's the thing. It didn't remain covert because Dubai made a calculated decision to expose it. Why? Because the UAE wanted to send a message. We may not love Hamas, but we won't tolerate foreign assassinations on our soil. Fair enough. Sovereign nations get to make those calls. But it meant Israel paid a price in operational security for a tactical success. Was it worth it? Third, the precedent. By conducting such a high-profile operation in a neutral country, Israel reinforced a message. We will hunt our enemies anywhere. No borders, no sanctuary. That message has value. It creates fear. It creates deterrence. But it also creates resentment, creates motivation, creates recruitment. Every time Israel conducts an operation like Dubai, some young man in Gaza or the West Bank or Lebanon sees it and thinks, they'll never let us live in peace. They'll hunt us forever. We have no choice but to fight. Is that rational? Debatable? Is it understandable? Yes. And whether it's rational or not doesn't matter. What matters is it happens. That's documented. That's measurable. So the operation that was supposed to create deterrence also created motivation. Both things can be true at once. Here's something interesting. The Dubai operation became a case study, not just in intelligence circles, though it certainly became that, but in media, in journalism schools, in documentary filmmaking, in books and articles and podcasts. Why? Because it was so perfectly documented. The security camera footage, the passport photographs, the timeline reconstructed frame by frame. It was intelligence porn, the complete picture of how a modern assassination works. Dozens of documentaries were made about Dubai. Books were written, podcasts were produced, journalists investigated every angle. And here's what that media coverage did. It made Mossad seem simultaneously brilliant and vulnerable. Brilliant because look at the coordination, the planning, the execution. 26 people moving through a city without being detected in real time. Technical excellence, operational precision. Vulnerable because look at the exposure, the burned operatives, the passport crisis, the diplomatic fallout, the way a sophisticated operation became completely transparent within days. This dual narrative, genius, and exposure became the story of Dubai. And that story had consequences. For Mossad, the operation became both their greatest success and their greatest embarrassment. Success in execution, embarrassment in exposure. Young Mossad officers probably study Dubai as an example of how to conduct an operation, and also as an example of how operational security can unravel even when the operation succeeds. For Hamas, the operation became proof of Israeli reach and ruthlessness, proof that nowhere is safe, proof that they need better security, proof that martyrdom is always possible. For the public, the operation became the template for understanding how modern intelligence operations work. Every subsequent assassination, whether attributed to Mossad or CIA or Russia or anyone else, gets compared to Dubai. Dubai became the benchmark, the standard, the case everyone references. Is that good for Israel? Mixed bag. On one hand, it reinforces the deterrence message. Everyone knows Mossad is capable of this level of operation. On the other hand, it removes mystery. And in intelligence work, mystery is valuable. The less your enemies know about your methods, the better. Dubai removed a lot of mystery. Let's return to Ahmed al-Ja'abari, the man who replaced al-Mabhouh as Hamas's weapons coordinator. By 2012, al-Ja'abari wasn't just coordinating weapons, he was coordinating strategy. He'd been promoted, expanded his role, became one of Hamas's most important commanders. Why? Because he was effective, because he'd learned from al-Mabhouh's death, because he'd built systems that were harder to disrupt. The rockets kept coming, through tunnels under the Egyptian border, through maritime routes, through increasingly sophisticated smuggling networks. By November 2012, Hamas had enough firepower to launch a significant offensive against Israel. Operation Pillar of Defense, or as Hamas called it, Operation Stones of Baked Clay. 8 days of conflict. Hundreds of rockets fired at Israeli cities. Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, the usual escalation cycle. And on November 14, 2012, Israel assassinated Ahmed al-Ja'abari. Airstrike. Direct hit on his car in Gaza City. Killed instantly. The man who'd replaced al-Mabhouh was now gone too. And Hamas? They replaced him. Within weeks, someone new stepped up. The weapons kept flowing. The organization kept functioning. Because here's what Israel learned, or should have learned, from Dubai and its aftermath. Killing commanders doesn't destroy organizations. It just creates new commanders. This is the Hydra effect. Cut off one head, 2 more grow back. It's a cliche because it's true. Now Israel knows this. They're not stupid. They understand organizational dynamics. So why keep doing it? Several reasons. 1, it disrupts operations temporarily. Even if someone new takes over, there's a transition period. Confusion, reorganization. During that window, capabilities decrease. 2, it creates fear among leadership. If you become important enough, you become a target. That makes people hesitate. Hesitation creates opportunities. 3, it satisfies domestic politics. Israeli citizens want action. They want to see their government responding to threats. Assassinations are visible responses. 4, it maintains operational readiness. Intelligence agencies need to use their capabilities or they atrophy. Operations keep skills sharp. These are all valid reasons. But they're tactical reasons, not strategic ones. Strategically, the question remains, does killing Hamas commanders make Israel safer? 10 years after Dubai, the answer seems to be, not significantly. Hamas in 2020 was more capable than Hamas in 2010. More rockets, more sophisticated tactics, more organizational resilience. Al-Mabhouh's death didn't prevent that. Neither did al-Ja'abari's death. Neither did the deaths of dozens of other commanders. The organization evolved, adapted, persisted. That's the nature of ideological movements. You can't kill an idea. You can only kill the people carrying the idea. And ideas don't die with people. By 2015, 5 years after Dubai, the strategic situation looked like this. Hamas still existed, still controlled Gaza, still committed to armed resistance, weapons supply undiminished, organizational structure intact, public support in Gaza stable or growing. Israel, still in conflict with Hamas, still conducting operations against Hamas leaders, still trying to prevent weapons smuggling. Success rate, mixed at best. The fundamental dynamic hadn't changed at all. Dubai was supposed to be a significant blow to Hamas's military capability. It wasn't. The system adapted too quickly. The replacement was too effective. The underlying supply chains were too resilient. Now let's zoom out even further. Let's look at the broader picture, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in 2020 versus 2010. In 2010, there was at least some pretense of a peace process. Negotiations happened occasionally. The two-state solution was still discussed as plausible. By 2020, that pretense was mostly gone. The peace process was dead. The two-state solution seemed impossible. The status quo, occupation resistance, periodic conflict, was entrenched. Did the Dubai operation contribute to that deterioration? Not directly. The conflict has many causes, many actors, many dynamics. But operations like Dubai are part of a pattern of tactical success without strategic victory, a pattern of killing individuals without resolving the underlying conflict. And after enough repetitions, the pattern becomes the strategy. The tactical becomes the strategic. The short-term response becomes the long-term approach. Is that what happened here? Let's look at the numbers. Between 2010 and 2020, major Gaza conflicts, 2012, 2014, 2021, Palestinian civilians killed, thousands Israeli civilians killed, dozens Hamas commanders assassinated, dozens Hamas eliminated as an organization, no weapon supply to Gaza eliminated, no rocket attacks on Israel eliminated. No, the pattern is clear. Lots of tactical operations, minimal strategic change. Now Israel would argue, and this is a fair argument, that without these operations, things would be worse. That every Hamas commander killed is one less person planning attacks. That every weapons shipment interrupted is fewer rockets on Israeli cities. True, all true. But the question isn't whether things would be worse without the operations. The question is whether the operations achieve their stated strategic goals. And the stated strategic goal, reducing the threat from Hamas, degrading their military capability, protecting Israeli civilians, has not been achieved. Not after Dubai. Not after dozens of similar operations. Not after 2 decades of this approach. The threat remains. The capability remains. The conflict remains. That's not a moral judgment, it's an empirical observation. This is always the hardest question to answer. What if? What if Mossad hadn't killed al-Mabhouh in Dubai in January 2010? Would anything be fundamentally different 10 years later? Let's think through the scenarios. Scenario 1. Al-Mabhouh continues his work. He coordinates weapons shipments. He meets with Iranian contacts. He does exactly what he was doing. For how long? Maybe years. Maybe until natural causes take him. Maybe until a different Mossad operation succeeds. In this scenario, does Hamas get more weapons than they did with al-Ja'abari as his replacement? Unclear. Al-Ja'abari was arguably more effective, so maybe Hamas would have had fewer weapons without the replacement, or maybe al-Mabhouh's experience would have led to similar expansion. We can't know. Scenario 2. Al-Mabhouh dies differently. Maybe Mossad gets him in Damascus, or Tehran, or somewhere else. A different operation. Less public, less exposure. In this scenario, the same result. Al-Mabhouh dead, but without the diplomatic fallout. Without the burned operatives, without the passport crisis. That would have been better for Israel. Same tactical success, lower strategic cost. So why Dubai? Why such a high-profile, high-risk operation in a neutral country? Probably because the opportunity presented itself. Al-Mabhouh was there. He was accessible. The team was ready. Intelligence operations often depend on opportunity rather than optimal planning. You take the shot when you have the shot. Fair enough. but it means the operation wasn't optimized for strategic outcome. It was optimized for tactical opportunity. Scenario 3. Al-Mabhouh is never killed. He lives. He continues working. He's still alive in 2020. Would Hamas be stronger? Would Israel be less safe? Again, unclear. Organizations are complex. Removing one person might weaken them, or it might force them to build better systems. We saw the latter in reality. Al-Mabhouh's death forced Hamas to build more resilient networks. Would those networks have been built anyway? Maybe. Or maybe al-Mabhouh's continued presence would have created dependency rather than resilience. The point is, we can't know, and that uncertainty is important, because it means we can't definitively say the operation was strategically successful. We can say it was tactically successful. The target was killed. But tactical success without strategic clarity is just action, movement without progress, doing something without achieving something. After Dubai, Mossad operations became more discreet, not less frequent, not less effective, but less visible. The operations in the 2010s, and there were many, didn't generate the same media exposure as Dubai, either because they were better concealed or because they happened in places where local governments didn't want to publicize them. Probably both. The lesson of Dubai seems to have been, operational success is important, but operational security is more important. You can kill the target and still lose if the operation gets exposed. Evidence of this shift. The 2020 assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, Iran's top nuclear scientist, was sophisticated. Probably Mossad, probably involved remote-controlled weapons and elaborate planning. But unlike Dubai, there was no security camera footage, no passport photographs, no team of 26 people with their faces plastered across international media, just a dead scientist and lots of speculation. That's how intelligence operations are supposed to work. Effective but invisible. Dubai was effective but visible, which is better than invisible and ineffective, but worse than effective and invisible. So Mossad adapted, learned, evolved. That's good tradecraft. But here's the question that remains. Did they learn the strategic lesson or just the tactical lesson? The tactical lesson. Don't get caught on camera. The strategic lesson. Targeted killings don't destroy organizations. There's evidence they learned the first lesson. Less evidence they learned the second. Because the pattern continues. Commanders are killed. Organizations replace them. The cycle repeats. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe the strategy is attrition. Just keep killing commanders until the organization can't replace them anymore. But 10 years after Dubai, there's not much evidence that strategy is working. Let's talk about people, not organizations, not strategies. People. Mahmoud al-Mabhouh had a wife, Iman, 4 children, extended family. When he died in Dubai, they grieved. Like any family grieves. The pain was real. The loss was real. Now you might say he was a terrorist. He killed people. His victims' families grieved too. True. All true. The soldiers he kidnapped in 1989 had families who grieved. The people killed by rockets he helped smuggle had families who grieved. Grief isn't a competition. Everyone's grief is real. Everyone's pain is real. But here's what happens in the aftermath of operations like Dubai. The children of the targeted person grow up with that grief, with that anger, with that memory of their father being hunted and killed in a hotel room in a foreign country. Do they forgive? Do they move on? Do they choose peace? Maybe. Some people break cycles. Some people choose differently than their parents. But many don't. Many take their father's place. Many join the same organizations. Many continue the same struggle. Al-Mabhouh's oldest son was 14 when his father died. He's 24 now in 2020. Old enough to fight. Old enough to make choices. What did he choose? We don't know his specific story, but we know the pattern. Sons often follow fathers, especially when fathers die as martyrs. So the operation that eliminated one Hamas commander might have created the next one. This is the multi-generational nature of conflict. The decisions made today create the conflicts of tomorrow. Israel knows this. Hamas knows this. Everyone involved knows this. And yet the cycle continues. Why? Because nobody knows how to stop it. Because both sides believe they're right. Because both sides have legitimate grievances and illegitimate responses. Because this conflict is 70+ years old and counting. One assassination in Dubai in 2010 didn't start this cycle, and it didn't stop it. It was just another rotation, another turn of the wheel. Here's the thing about the Dubai operation and operations like it that makes analysis so difficult. Multiple things can be true at once. True, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was involved in terrorism. He helped plan attacks. He helped kill people. He was a legitimate target according to Israel's definition of legitimate targets. Also true, targeted assassinations often create more problems than they solve. They generate martyrs, replacement commanders, and multi-generational resentment. True, Mossad executed the operation with remarkable technical competence. The planning was sophisticated. The coordination was impressive. Also true, the operation became a diplomatic and intelligence embarrassment within weeks. Operatives were exposed. Allies were alienated. Methods were compromised. True, Israel has a right to defend itself, a duty to protect its citizens, a need to respond to threats. Also true, military operations without political solutions don't resolve conflicts. They just perpetuate them. All of these statements are true simultaneously. None of them cancel each other out. That's the complexity nobody wants to admit, because complexity doesn't fit into narratives. Narratives need good guys and bad guys, heroes and villains, success and failure. But reality is messy. Reality is both and instead of either or. The Dubai operation was both a tactical success and a strategic wash, both impressive and counterproductive, both justified and questionable, both effective in the moment and ineffective in the long term. How do you evaluate that? You can't. Not cleanly. Not definitively. You can only look at the evidence, look at what changed and what didn't. Look at what was gained and what was lost. And after looking at all of that, you can ask, was it worth it? January 19th, 2020. Exactly 10 years after the operation. Hamas still exists, still controls Gaza, still fires rockets at Israeli cities, still receives weapons from Iran. Israel still conducts operations against Hamas, still assassinates commanders, still tries to prevent weapons smuggling. The fundamental dynamic is unchanged. So what did the Dubai operation actually achieve? Short term, it eliminated one Hamas commander. It sent a message about Israeli reach. It demonstrated Mossad capability. Medium term, it created diplomatic complications. It exposed operatives. It forced Hamas to improve their security. Long term, it changed very little. The organization adapted. The conflict continued. The cycle persisted. Was it worth it? That depends on your criteria for worth it. If success means killing the target, yes, worth it. If success means weakening Hamas, unclear. They adapted quickly. If success means improving Israeli security, no. The threat level in 2020 was similar to 2010. If success means advancing toward peace, definitely not. The peace process was deader in 2020 than in 2010. If success means maintaining operational capability, yes. Mossad proved they could still conduct complex operations. If success means cost-benefit analysis, questionable. High cost for limited strategic gain. The honest answer is, it depends on what you were trying to achieve. And that's the problem. Different stakeholders had different goals. Mossad wanted to eliminate a target. Success. Israeli government wanted to demonstrate strength. Success. Israeli citizens wanted safety. Failure. Hamas wanted martyrdom. Success. The international community wanted stability. failure. Everyone got something. Nobody got everything. That's probably the most accurate assessment. The Dubai operation was a partial success with partial failures, producing partial results that partially mattered. Not very satisfying, but accurate. 10 years after Dubai, several questions remain unanswered. Question 1. Could Israel have achieved the same result with lower cost? If al-Mabhouh had been killed in Damascus or Gaza, there would have been no diplomatic fallout, no exposed operatives, no international investigation. Same result, target eliminated, but without the complications. Was Dubai chosen because it was optimal or because it was available? We'll probably never know. Question 2. Did the operation deter future Hamas activities? There's no evidence it did. Weapons smuggling continued, rocket attacks continued. If anything, Hamas became more cautious, which made them harder to track. Deterrence is hard to measure, but measured by outcomes, it didn't work. Question 3. Could the resources used for Dubai have been better spent elsewhere? 26 operatives, months of planning, significant intelligence resources, all dedicated to killing one mid-level Hamas commander. What if those resources had been used for intelligence gathering, for preventing attacks, for supporting political solutions? We can't know the counterfactual, but it's worth asking. Question 4. Did the operation advance Israeli strategic interests? 10 years later, Israel's strategic position relative to Hamas is roughly the same. Maybe slightly better in some ways, maybe slightly worse in others, but fundamentally unchanged. If operations don't advance strategic interests, why conduct them? Question 5. Is there an alternative approach? This is the biggest question, the one everyone avoids. If targeted assassinations don't resolve the conflict, what does? Political solutions? Negotiations? Compromise? Those are harder, much harder. They require both sides to make concessions, to acknowledge complexity, to move past narratives of absolute right and absolute wrong. It's easier to conduct operations, to kill bad guys, to do something visible and tactical. But easier doesn't mean better. 10 years after the Dubai operation, what have we learned? We learned that tactical brilliance doesn't guarantee strategic success. We learned that killing individuals doesn't destroy organizations. We learned that high-profile operations create both deterrence and martyrdom. We learned that diplomatic costs can outweigh tactical gains. We learned that security camera footage can turn a covert operation into a public spectacle. We learned that weapons supply chains are more resilient than we thought. We learned that replacement commanders can be more effective than the originals. We learned that conflicts don't end with operations. They just continue with different people. Most importantly, we learned that asking, "Did it work?" requires defining work. If work means killing the target, yes, it worked. If work means resolving the conflict, no, it didn't work. And maybe that's the real lesson. Tactics and strategy are different things. You can win every tactical engagement and still lose strategically. You can execute perfect operations and still not achieve peace. You can kill every commander and still face the same threats. Because organizations are more than individuals. Conflicts are more than operations. Strategy is more than tactics. The Dubai operation was a perfect execution of an imperfect strategy. And 10 years later, we're still living with the consequences. Not catastrophic consequences, not transformative consequences, just consequences. The conflict continues. The operations continue. The cycle continues. Maybe one day, someone will figure out how to break it. But the Dubai operation in 2010 wasn't that breakthrough. It was just another turn of the wheel. Another chapter in a long story. Another perfectly executed operation that changed very little. And maybe that's the saddest part. All that planning, all that execution, all that risk, all that cost. For what? For 10 years later to look remarkably similar to 10 years before. That's not a moral judgment. That's not taking sides. That's just an observation about what actually changed in the decade after Mossad's perfect operation. The answer: not as much as anyone hoped, not as much as anyone planned, not as much as anyone wanted, just not that much. Every operation has more than one story. Most channels tell you about the perfect execution. We tell you about what happened after, about the consequences, about the long-term impact, about whether perfect operations actually achieve anything meaningful. Subscribe for more perspectives on what really happens after the operation ends, because that's when the real story begins.